Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday Gentle Yoga. I'm Kristin O'Donnell, and feel free for today's class. If you have props, feel free to reach for a blanket if you have one, two blocks or books that are the same height if you don't have blocks, and any cushions or anything else that you might like to make this a supportive practice for yourself. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat box. I'll be checking that periodically during today's class. And before we get started, I just want to mention that Hands to Heart Center Yoga for the People is a nonprofit organization that shares the healing practice of yoga with people affected by addiction, poverty, and trauma in the greater Boston area. Hands to Heart Center would like to thank the Boston Public Library for partnering with us on this project. So today, feel free to start either in a seated shape with your knees bent, feet flat on the floor, or you can find this same shape in lying down. So maybe lying down on your back with your knees bent, feet flat on the floor. Arms can be out by your sides for the purpose of walking you through this beginning part of class. I'm going to stay in seated, but feel free to be in seated, feel free to be in lying down, whatever feels best in your body. And once you settle into either shape, maybe closing your eyes or keeping a soft gaze in front of you, taking a few moments in your own time to settle into this shape, settling into the space that you're in. And maybe if you'd like, giving yourself a big hug or thank you for making your way to your mat today. Whenever you're ready, maybe starting to notice your breathing, noticing each inhale and exhale. And without judgment or without trying to change anything, starting to notice what your breath might be doing, whether it's fast or slow, long or short. You can start to notice and be aware, but that's all that you need to move into. No judgment, no changing it, allowing it to be as it is. And as your feet are standing on the floor, resting on the floor or on your mat, you might start to notice how your feet are resting. Maybe noticing if both feet are evenly resting on the floor. Maybe your feet seem to be resting more towards the left side of each foot. Maybe they seem to be resting more towards the right side. You might notice them resting more in the front or back. You can always also notice if you can feel your arch. Is there a prominent arch where your feet are not touching the floor? Or maybe your feet don't have an arch and your whole of your foot is touching the floor. Allowing yourself to notice, and again, without judgment, without trying to change anything, starting to be aware of how both of your feet are resting in this moment. And as you're lying down, or if you're sitting, starting to notice what other parts of your body are touching the floor. So maybe that means your hips, maybe both of your hips or one of your hips is resting on the floor. Maybe your hands or arms are resting on the floor. If you're lying down, you might notice your shoulders, your head, any other parts of your back, maybe your middle or upper back. Allowing yourself to notice what parts of your body are resting on the floor and what parts might not be touching the floor at all. Again, we are here to notice without judgment, with love, and with acceptance of what is showing up for you this afternoon. So, if you'd like, maybe taking a few more moments in this place, whether you're seated or lying down, to notice what might be coming up for you, to be aware, and to take that as information for yourself. Taking another few moments in this space, finding whatever is there for you to find. And in your own time, if you're in seated, slowly starting to make your way to lying down. And if you're lying down, maybe staying where you are, taking a few more moments to notice what might be showing up for you. And once you make your way to the floor, if you weren't already there, we'll start to add some movement into the body. So, again, keeping your knees bent, feet are resting on the floor. And in your own time, slowly starting to press into your feet. And you might start to notice that your pelvis starts to move, your lower back might start to flatten on the floor, and maybe your tailbone starts to lift up off the floor. So, making this movement as big or as small as you might like. And then, whenever you're ready, slowly releasing that movement, allowing your pelvis to move back to neutral. And then maybe moving to have the pelvis move the other way. So this time, more of the pressure might be in your tailbone, moving the pelvis. Maybe there's a bigger gap in your lower back. But again, you're still using your feet to leverage you in either shape. Slowly releasing that, bringing your pelvis back to center. And in your own time, doing that a few times, maybe pressing into the floor with your feet, allowing your lower back to make its way to the floor, pelvis moving backward, tailbone moving up off the floor. Then, in your own time, slowly releasing any pressure in your feet, allowing your pelvis to move back to center. And in your own time, maybe starting to move your pelvis the opposite direction. Maybe a bigger gap comes in your lower back. And again, it's all about the pressure you're putting into your feet as they touch the floor. And then releasing that, coming back to neutral, and maybe doing that one more time. Again, pressing your feet into the mat, lowering your lower back down towards the floor, tailbone coming up. In your own time, releasing that movement, and maybe moving the pelvis in the opposite direction. Letting a bigger gap come in between your lower back and the floor. And then slowly, slowly coming back to center, releasing all of that movement. So maybe starting to gently rock your knees from side to side, letting go of everything you just did, allowing your hips to rock from side to side as they rock on the floor. And again, this can be a big or a small movement, really choosing what feels right in your body. This practice is for you and you only. So you can follow along with me, or you can choose to move in any other way that your body is calling for today. In your own time, maybe slowly bringing your knees back to center. And you might keep your feet where they are resting. If you'd like, you can move them a little bit closer to your hips if that's available in your body. And maybe with your hands by each of your sides, slowly, once again, pressing into your feet, and this time lifting your pelvis off the floor completely. Making this a big or a small movement. So you might not even see my pelvis lifting up off the floor. And then slowly lowering your pelvis back down to the floor. Letting go of any pressure, coming back to neutral. And maybe doing that a few times in your own time, pressing into the floor with your feet. And whenever you're ready, maybe lifting your pelvis up off the floor. And whenever you're ready, slowly reversing that movement, lowering your pelvis back down to the floor, making your way back to neutral. And maybe if you'd like, one more time, pressing into the floor, lifting your pelvis up. And in your own time, slowly lowering your pelvis back down to the floor. Finding your way to neutral whenever you're ready. And maybe starting to walk your feet out to the edges of your mat. And then both knees might start to fall in towards each other. Maybe both knees start to rest against one another. And here, if you'd like, maybe pausing in this shape, or if you'd like to add some movement, maybe once again, moving your legs from side to side. Again, this can be a small movement, or maybe it's a bigger movement. Maybe your legs make their way down towards the floor, going as slowly as you might like in your body, making this as big or as small as you might like. And once you get the hang of this movement back and forth, if you'd like, you can start to rotate your head. So maybe if your legs fall over to the right side, maybe your head moves to look over to your left. And then bringing your legs back to center, head rolls back to center. And maybe as your legs move over to the left side, your head looks over towards the right. So bringing your body into a gentle twist with the legs moving in one direction, your head moving in the other. Taking your time with this movement, adding whichever pieces of this movement you might like to include. And then maybe doing one more in both directions before making your way back to center, bringing those knees back towards each other and slowly walking your feet so that they are hip width apart. The knees are not knocking in towards each other anymore. And maybe bending your right leg, bringing it in towards your chest. You can choose to bring your hands to hold your right shin, pausing in this shape. The left leg can be bent, or you might choose to straighten it down your mat. Taking a few moments in this shape. And if you'd like, maybe moving your right leg, keeping it bent maybe, but moving it in gentle, small circles. Opening your hip a little bit more maybe. And if you chose to bring some circles into that movement, maybe choosing to reverse the movement in your own time. Finding whatever movement or stillness you might like in this shape, coming back to center whenever you're ready, and maybe starting to lift your right leg up towards the ceiling. If you'd like, you can bring your hands behind your upper right leg. Maybe pausing in this shape for a few breaths. If you'd like, you can start to flex and point your right toes. Maybe making this a small movement, taking your time with each flex and point. You can also choose maybe to add some ankle circles into this movement. There's always a choice to be still, or you can find any movement that is calling to you in this shape. If you chose ankle circles, maybe doing a few in both directions. And then whenever you're ready, slowly lowering your right leg down to the floor, bringing your hands out from around your leg. And maybe starting to bend your left knee, bringing it in towards your chest. Hands can come around your left shin. Right leg can be bent with your foot on the floor, or you might choose to straighten your right leg. And maybe pausing here, holding your left knee into your chest. If you'd like, you can choose to gently move your left leg in circles, maybe keeping it bent. making this movement as big or as small as you might like. And if you did choose circles, maybe doing a few in both directions. Finding any movement or stillness in this shape that you might like. And when you're ready, finding your way back to center. And in your own time, starting to straighten your left leg up towards the ceiling. Maybe bringing your hands behind your upper left leg this time. Maybe adding some movement in your left toes, maybe pointing and flexing your left foot a few times. Making this movement as big or as small as you might like. Another choice might be to add some ankle circles. Maybe you choose to move your left ankle in circles. Finding whichever movement or stillness you might like in this shape. If you chose circles, maybe moving your ankle in the opposite direction as well. Taking your time, experimenting with what you might like to, what might be calling out to you today. And then in your own time, releasing your hands and slowly lowering your foot back down to the floor. In your own time, maybe bending both knees, bringing them in towards your chest. You might choose to rock from side to side in this shape, making sure you're breathing, finding whatever movement or stillness you might like. And in your own time, finding your way back to stillness and making your way to seated any time in any way you might like. You might choose to roll to one side, pressing your hands into the floor. Maybe you choose to rock your body forward and back, rocking yourself up to seated. Whichever way you might like to get there, finding your way to seated in your own time. If you do have a block or book or a blanket and you'd like to bring your hips up a little higher, you can feel free to find a seat on any of your props. That can help keep a straight back with when your hips are a little higher than your knees. It can help keep that tall spine. Finding your way to seated and maybe adding some movement in your head and neck. You might choose to move your head from side to side a few times. Another choice might be to bring your head up towards the ceiling and down towards the floor. Finding whatever movement is calling to you. Maybe moving your head in circles. You might move your head in half head circles from left to right. Or maybe moving your head in full head circles all the way around. And maybe experimenting with any or all of these choices. If you did choose full head circles, maybe doing a few in both directions. And you might notice that maybe parts of your head and neck might need a little bit more attention. So feel free to pause in that shape for a few moments before moving on, maybe breathing into that space. And give your head and neck a little bit more attention where it might be calling out for that. And whenever you're ready, in your own time, slowly starting to make your way back to seated, back to center. And maybe starting to add some movement in your upper body. You might start to move your upper body from side to side, maybe forward and back. And as we did with the head, you might choose to add some circles. So, really experimenting with any or all of these choices, maybe moving in upper body circles, maybe moving from side to side or front to back. And if you chose circles, maybe doing a few in one direction, and in your own time, reversing that direction whenever you might like. finding any of that movement, making it as big or as small as you might like, and making your way back to center in your own time. If you'd like, maybe bringing your arms out by your sides and eventually bringing them to give yourself a big hug, your opposite hands reaching for your opposite shoulders. In your own time, maybe inhaling, you might start to bring your head and chest to look up towards the ceiling. Maybe your arms follow. And then maybe slowly starting to bring your arms down. Maybe your head and chest start to look down towards the floor. If you like, possibly doing this a few times, head and chest might look up, arms might follow. And then maybe lowering your arms, moving your head and chest down towards the floor. And possibly experimenting with that one more time, looking up towards the ceiling, gentle back bend, and maybe looking down towards the floor, gentle forward fold. In your own time, coming back to center, taking your arms out by the sides, and this time reversing that big hug. So, whichever arm was on top last time is now on the bottom. Hands reach for your shoulders. And once again, maybe lifting your head and chest up towards the ceiling. Maybe your arms follow. And in your own time, maybe your arms move down towards the floor. Maybe your head and chest follow. Doing that two more times in both directions, maybe. And if you'd like, moving up towards the ceiling, into that gentle back bend, maybe moving down towards the floor, into that gentle forward fold. If you'd like, maybe doing this movement one more time, possibly moving up to look towards the ceiling, and possibly looking down towards the floor. Coming back to center whenever you're ready, maybe releasing your arms by your sides and starting to move your arms in any way that you might like. So maybe it's moving them out by your sides, coming back in to meet each other. Maybe your arms move in front of your body, up towards the ceiling and out by your sides. Feel free to move in any way that feels right in your body. Maybe it's the same movement each time you move your arms. Maybe it changes with each movement of your arms. Experimenting with moving your arms in any way that you might like. You might start to open your shoulders up, reaching your arms behind you, in front of you, above you, to your sides, letting your arms move in any way that is calling to you in this moment. Finding that movement, that space. And whenever you're ready, slowly starting to bring your movement to a close, bringing your arms back to center whenever you're ready. And if you'd like, maybe bringing your right hand down to the floor next to you. Maybe your left hand reaching up overhead into a side stretch. You might choose to pause in this shape, maybe taking a few moments to rest in this shape. If you'd like, maybe to move over to the other side, starting to roll forward, reaching both hands in front of you as if you're holding a big beach ball, and then making your way over to the other side. The left hand may be coming to the floor, your right hand moving above your head. Maybe pausing on this side of the shape. And if you'd like, allowing this to be a fluid movement, or maybe choosing to add stillness. If you'd like, maybe moving forward into that forward fold, holding that big beach ball possibly, and then making your way over to the right side in your own time. You might choose to pause here for a few moments, or you might choose to move immediately to the left side. Experimenting with what feels right in your body, making your way to the other side in your own time, and maybe allowing yourself to pause or making this a continuous movement. Finding this a few more times, moving over to the right side. Maybe taking a few moments on this side. And whenever you're ready, making your way over to the left side one last time. Maybe pausing in this shape and finally making your way back to center in your own time. If you'd like, maybe bringing your arms, your hands in front of your chest, interlacing your fingertips and moving your palms away from your body. You might curve your lower back in this shape. Reaching your arms in one direction, your lower back moving in the opposite direction. And then maybe in your own time, bringing your arms up overhead, maybe this time stretching your upper body up towards the ceiling. You might choose to move from side to side in this shape. Finding your way back to center, maybe releasing your hands from that interlace and lowering your hands back down to the floor. If you'd like, maybe inhaling and bringing your arms up overhead. On your exhale, you might bring your right hand behind your back, left hand resting on your right knee, moving into a twist. So maybe inhaling and moving a little bit more into your twist, or maybe choosing to pause. And on the exhale, maybe lengthening your spine. Taking a few moments here, maybe inhale, lengthen, and maybe on your exhale, you might twist a little bit more, or maybe stay with this twist in whatever shape feels right for you. Whenever you're ready, maybe inhaling, coming back to center, arms overhead, and maybe moving into the other side. This time, the left hand reaches behind your back to the floor. Right hand might be resting on your left knee. And you might choose to inhale, maybe straighten your spine in this shape. Maybe on your exhale, you choose to twist a little bit more. Maybe pausing in this shape for a few breaths without moving, finding whatever feels right in your body. And in your own time, maybe coming back to center, maybe lifting your arms back overhead and then letting them fall by your sides. Finding your way in your own time to your hands and knees. So maybe in your own time, making your way to your hands and knees. If you have sensitive knees, feel free to reach for a blanket or a cushion to bring to your mat, or you can rest your knees on that for extra support. And when you're ready, bringing your hands to the mat, your knees to the mat or to that blanket or cushion. Possibly having your wrists underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. And then maybe starting to add some small movements. You might choose to move your hips from side to side, making this movement as gentle as you'd like, as big or as small as you'd like. Finding whatever movement or stillness you might like in your body. If you'd like to make this movement a little bit bigger, you might choose to add circles with your hip movements. Maybe these circles are small, or maybe these are big. Your hips might make their way down towards your feet, possibly, depending how big or small this movement is for you. And if you chose hip circles, maybe doing a few in one direction. And then whenever you're ready, starting to reverse that direction, possibly going the opposite way. Finding your way back to center whenever you're ready. And possibly moving into a few cat-cow movements. So maybe on your inhale, lifting your head to look in front of you, having a little curve in your lower back into your cow shape. And maybe on your exhale, you might start to lower your head down, curving your lower back up towards the ceiling into your cat shape. You can choose to move back and forth from one shape to the other. Maybe inhale, head and chest look up in front of you. Maybe exhale, lowering your head down and curving your lower back up away from you. You might choose to move from one shape to the other. You might choose to be still in one shape or the other. Allowing yourself to listen to your body and notice what feels right for you. Noticing what maybe your body is asking for today. This might be different from yesterday or even this morning. Allowing yourself to be aware and to notice in your own time. So if you'd like choosing stillness or choosing movement, maybe finding your cat and cow movements together, or maybe for you, they're a separate movement, whichever feels right in your body. And in your own time, maybe doing one more in both direction, wherever you are. And whenever you're ready, finding your way back to a neutral shape. Once you find your way to neutral, maybe doing a few gentle little side stretch. So if you'd like, you might bring your head to gaze over your right shoulder at your right foot, and then maybe coming back to center. In your own time, moving your gaze over your left shoulder at your left foot, and then maybe coming back to center. If you'd like, you can do that a few times, looking over at your left foot, back to center, maybe looking over at your right foot, back to center. And maybe one more time, if you'd like, moving over to the right, to center, and over to the left, back to center. Now, if you'd like, maybe slowly starting to bring your hips towards your feet, coming off your hands. And if you notice your wrists bothering you a little bit or giving you a little bit of strain, feel free to add some movement. You can move your wrist in circles in this shape, can choose to interlace your fingers and move your wrists in a figure 8 movement. Can always choose to move each hand individually, up and back. So we're really just introducing to our wrist, hey, we've been in one direction for a while. Here's another direction you can go. And that can help relieve anything that might be bothering you in your wrists, anything that might be causing a little bit of strain. In our table with our hands and knees on the mat, another choice, if your wrists are bothering you, you can always choose to find your way down to your forearms. Bringing your hands back to the mat, so coming back to this table shape with our hands and knees on the mat. And maybe extending your right leg. You might choose to press your right toes into the mat. If you'd like, you can add some movement, maybe gently moving forward and back. In your own time, maybe coming back to center and then possibly moving your right leg so that it's hip height. You might choose to stay here, possibly keeping your core engaged. Gaze is down at your mat, keeping your head in line with your spine. And maybe extending your left arm out in front if that feels available in your body. Finding your balance if you'd like. Taking a few moments with your leg extended by itself or your arm and leg extended at the same time. And then in your own time, lowering your leg and maybe your arm if you chose to use that as a variation as well. Whenever you're ready, maybe finding your way to the other side. You might press your left leg behind you, extending it behind you, your toes pressing into the mat, and maybe gently rocking forward and back a few times. Adding this gentle movement if you'd like. Possibly pausing in stillness and maybe lifting your left leg hip height. You might choose to stay here, Possibly keeping your core engaged, gaze is down at the floor. If this feels okay and you'd like to balance, you can extend your right arm out in front. Pausing in this shape for a few moments, choosing either variation with your leg by itself or your arm and leg together. And then in your own time, finding your way back to the floor, gently bringing your leg down. Maybe your arm comes down if you chose that variation as well. Then, once again, if you'd like, maybe sitting back towards your feet and possibly moving your wrists if they're giving you a little bit of discomfort. And we'll find our way off of our wrists in a little bit. In your own time, coming back to table, hands come back to the mat in your own time. And maybe coming into your downward dog. You might choose to go to downward dog from this shape. You might choose to bring your hands a little far forward than where they just were. And maybe pressing your toes into the mat, straightening your knees, and bringing your hips up towards the ceiling. Finding this downward dog shape in your own time. And maybe being still in this shape, or maybe choosing to add movement. You might choose to walk in place, bending one knee and then the other, almost as if you're walking your dog. You might choose to move your hips from side to side. You might choose to bend and straighten your knees at the same time. Finding any movement or stillness in this shape, whatever your body is calling for in this moment. And in your own time, whenever you're ready, slowly starting to bring both feet back to stillness and maybe slowly walking your feet towards your hands, making your way to a standing forward fold. You might let your upper body hang in the shape, maybe bringing your opposite elbow to opposite, your opposite hand to opposite elbow into your ragdoll shape. Letting your upper body be heavy, maybe your head hangs. Maybe you choose to move from side to side. Another choice might be to shake your head yes and no a few times. Possibly letting any tension in your head and neck release. And whenever you're ready in your own time, maybe releasing your hands back down towards the floor. And with your hands on blocks or books or on the floor, you might start to bend your left knee, bringing your left knee to the floor. So if you do have a blanket or cushion, you can make sure that your left knee is resting on it. Keeping your right foot resting on the floor. Hands can be on blocks or books if you have them, or they can be on the floor, whatever feels accessible in your body. And in your own time, whether you have your hands on blocks or books or the floor, you might start to walk forward. So maybe slowly starting to walk forward, you might notice your hips follow along. So if you'd like, you can start to move your hips forward. And maybe slowly walking back to center. Now, if you'd like, maybe moving into that shape once again, hips might come forward. If it's accessible to you, you can choose to bring your arms up overhead. So arms can be overhead, hands can also still be on those blocks or books or the floor. Maybe pausing in this shape, wherever your hands may be. Hips can move forward, they can stay in that neutral shape, whatever feels right in your body. And then whenever you're ready, if you'd like, maybe bringing your hands down to those blocks or books or to the floor. And in your own time, maybe starting to walk your hands towards your back leg. You might start to straighten your right leg, maybe flexing your right foot. Another choice Might be to move your right leg from side to side on your heel, and maybe pausing in this shape for a few breaths. And whenever you're ready, maybe slowly walking yourself back to center. In your own time, doing that a few times. So maybe starting to walk forward, arms might lift or they might stay where they are. And then in your own time, maybe starting to walk backward. Hands stopping when they're by your left leg, maybe straightening your right leg, maybe pausing in this shape for a moment or two. And then in your own time, coming back to center. We'll do that one more time. So in your own time, maybe walking forward, hands are in the air or they're on blocks. And then possibly starting to walk your hands backward. Taking your time getting there. And whenever you're ready, moving back to center. Now, if you have a blocker book on the mat, moving it aside for a moment and maybe walking your right leg so that your right foot is on the far edge of your mat. Both hands with blocks or books, if you'd like, can come on the inside of your right leg, finding your lizard shape. Hands might stay on blocks or books. They might make their way to the floor. You can also choose to bring your forearms down to the floor or to those blocks or books if you have them. Finding any variation, if you notice that your right foot starts to lift up off the floor, can allow it to do that, opening out to the side. Finding a few moments of stillness, or if you'd like to add movement, you can add some gentle rocks forward and back, or side to side in this shape in your own time. And in your own time, whenever you're ready, slowly bringing your right foot back to the mat if it's not already there. And making sure your left hand is on the mat or a block or book, and maybe lifting the right arm up towards the ceiling. So moving into a gentle twist over to the right side of your mat. If you'd like, you can add some movement with the right arm, moving it back and forth. Maybe it stays still. Finding whatever stillness or movement you might like. In your own time, bringing your right arm back to center if it's not already there, and slowly bringing it down to the floor. Whenever you're ready, bringing your right leg to meet the left leg on the mat and finding your way back to your table, hands and knees on the mat. From here, maybe reaching the right arm up overhead. So again, similar to that twist we just did a moment ago. And then maybe taking that right arm and reaching it behind your left wrist, bringing your right shoulder and head down to the mat. Now I'm going to show you this shape from the front too, so you can see what that might look like. Right shoulder and head down at the mat, maybe walking the left hand towards the front of your mat. Finding your thread the needle shape. Taking a few moments in this shape to pause and to notice. And whenever you're ready, in your own time, if you did walk your left hand towards the front of your mat, slowly walking it back towards your head, and then pressing into your left hand, using it to come back to your table. Maybe the right hand lifts up one more time, and then back to your mat. Now, once you're in your table shape, you might choose to walk your hands forward, slowly bringing your head and chest down towards the floor. If you'd like, you can reach for a block and rest your head on that block or book if you have one, or maybe resting your head on the floor if that's available to you. Making sure your neck feels okay in this shape, keeping your hips where they are, and taking a pause if you'd like for a moment or two. And in your own time, slowly walking your hands back to your table shape. And this time, bringing your left foot in between your hands. Again, hands can be on blocks or books if you have them. They can be on the floor. And in your own time, maybe slowly starting to walk your hands forward. Maybe your hips follow. Pausing in this shape for a moment or two, and then maybe walking back to center, back to your kneeling lunge. And then finding a little bit more movement whenever you're ready. Maybe once again, walking your hands forward. Hands can stay on blocks or books, or if you'd like, you can lift them up overhead. Maybe you start to press your hips forward or keep them neutral. And then in your own time, bringing your hands back to blocks or books or to the floor if your hands were up towards the ceiling. And slowly starting to walk your hands back towards your right leg. You might start to straighten your left leg, maybe flexing your left leg, maybe moving your left leg from side to side. Taking a moment or two in this shape. We'll experiment with this movement 2 more times. So in your own time, walking back to center. Maybe slowly walking forward. Hips can come forward if you'd like. Arms can stay on the floor or blocks or books, or maybe arms lift up overhead. And in your own time, slowly walking your hands back towards your right leg. You might choose to straighten your left leg, maybe flexing your left toes, maybe rocking your left leg back and forth on your heel from side to side. And then in your own time, moving back to center. One more time, possibly walking forward. Maybe hips follow, maybe arms stay on the blocks or books or the floor, or maybe your arms lift up. And then if your arms lifted up, lowering them back down and slowly walking back towards your right leg. Maybe straightening your left leg, maybe flexing your foot, maybe rocking from side to side. In your own time, walking back to neutral. And then maybe moving your left hand out of the way and walking your left foot to the far left edge of your mat. Both hands can stay on blocks or books on the inside of your left leg. You can also choose to have your hands on the floor. Maybe your forearms come down to the floor, or maybe they rest on a block as well. You might choose to lift your left foot up off the floor. Maybe that left hip opens out to the side. Taking a few moments on this side of the shape, allowing whatever wants to happen, allowing that to happen. Letting go of any tension in your body. And then whenever you're ready, bringing your left foot back to the floor if it's not already there. Making sure your right hand is on the floor or a block or book. And then this time lifting the left arm up overhead, maybe facing the left side of your mat. Option to add some movement here. You might choose to move your arm from side to side, forward and back, maybe choosing to be still. And then in your own time, slowly starting to bring your left hand back down to the floor, and maybe bringing your left knee to meet your right knee on the floor, back to your table shape. And this time, maybe lifting your left arm up again and then lowering it so that your left arm reaches behind your right wrist. Your left shoulder and head make their way to the floor. Option to walk your right hand towards the front of your mat into your thread the needle on the other side. Hips stay where they are. Letting yourself rest in this shape, letting go of any tension. And if you did walk your right hand forward, maybe slowly walking it back towards your head, pressing it into the floor, and making your way back to your table. Maybe that left arm reaches up and down one more time. And this time, maybe finding your way to your child shape. Your knees might stay together, or you might choose to widen your knees where they are. Slowly sitting your hips back towards your feet and maybe extending your hands out in front of your body. Your head might make its way to a block or book or to the floor. Maybe rolling your forehead from side to side. Noticing how your head and neck are resting. Taking your time, letting go of all that work that we just did. And in your own time, slowly making your way back to your table and finding your way to a seated shape. Finding your way to seated with the bottoms of your feet pressing against each other. So if you do have a blanket on your mat, you might move it aside and maybe bringing the bottoms of your feet so that they're pressing against each other into your bound angle shape. If you have blocks or books, you might bring them underneath your knees for extra support. And maybe keeping your back tall in this shape. If this feels okay in your body, you might choose to walk your hands forward into a forward fold. Taking your time with either choice, whether you stay seated or are walking forward into your forward fold. Maybe there's movement where you're walking forward and back a few times. In your own time, whenever you're ready, if you're in forward fold, slowly making your way to seated. And then maybe bringing your hands underneath your knees and pressing them towards each other. Extending your legs out in front of your body. And maybe giving them a little shake. Maybe bending and straightening your legs a few times. Letting them work out anything we just did. If you had blocks or books under your knees, you might move them aside and we'll start to find our way to lie on our backs. Taking your time getting there, finding your way to lie on your back in your own time. Maybe pausing in this shape for a few moments. If you'd like, you can hug your knees into your chest, maybe bringing your arms to hold your knees where they are. You might rock from side to side in this shape. And maybe you choose to rock over to the right side with your right leg on the floor, left leg on top. You might choose to bring your upper body to follow, or you might choose to move into a twist. So maybe your arms reach out in a T shape on either side of your body. Maybe your gaze and your head moves over towards your left shoulder. Taking a few moments in this shape, allowing your body to settle in this shape, whether you're lying on your side or whether you're in a twist. Finding your way back to center in your own time, maybe hugging your knees into your chest again. And whenever you're ready, maybe moving over to the left side. Left leg is on the floor, right leg is on top. You can choose to bring your upper body to follow. So you're lying on your side, or maybe you choose to extend your arms out in a T shape on either side of your body. Gaze moves over your right shoulder in a twist, finding either variation that works in your body. If you can, maybe letting go of any holding, of any tension. And then in your own time, whenever you're ready, slowly making your way back to center, maybe hugging your knees into your chest again. You might start to rock from side to side. If you'd like, you might choose to move to your happy baby shape, maybe bringing your hands on the outside edges of your feet, maybe keeping your legs by your hips, or maybe bringing your feet so that they're reaching up towards the ceiling. Knees might be pressing in towards your armpits. You can choose to rock from side to side in this shape. And then in your own time, finding your way to your rest, to your final resting shape of class. You might keep your knees bent, feet on the floor, or you might choose to extend your legs long down your mat. If you do have props and you want to use them, feel free to bring a blanket or cushion underneath your head. You can bring those two blocks or books and a blanket to the bottom of your mat, maybe bringing your feet to rest on top of them. You can also bring a blanket or a cushion underneath your knees to support the backs of your knees. And maybe bringing a blanket or cushion under anything else, under your arms, under your lower back, maybe a blanket over your body. Finding comfort in as many props as possible, allowing your body to be completely supported in this resting shape. And once you find a place where you'd like to settle in and pause, you can choose to do so, maybe closing your eyes or keeping a soft gaze in front of you. You can also find movement in this shape if you'd like, or you can choose to find stillness. Continuing with those two choices with movement or stillness. And maybe once again, noticing your breathing if you'd like. You can notice how your body moves with your breath. We're always breathing, which means we're always moving. And we don't always realize it. So you might start to notice that maybe your chest rises and falls with each breath. Maybe your abdomen expands and contracts. Maybe your arms and legs are moving as you're breathing as well. Allowing yourself to focus on your breath if you'd like, allowing yourself to notice any movement in your body, whether you choose to bring that movement into your body or not. And if you can, allowing this time to be a time to notice, to be aware, and without judgment and with love, allowing what comes up for you to be there. Now, if you'd like, I'll be quiet for the next minute. So feel free to use that time to be still, or maybe to use that time to add some movement into your body. In your own time, whenever you're ready, maybe slowly bringing some movement back into your body. You might start to wiggle your fingers and your toes, maybe moving your wrists and your ankles in circles. Another choice might be to bring your arms up overhead for a full body stretch. And then in your own time, maybe finding any other stretch you might like in your body, maybe finding a way to make your way to seated. You might choose to roll to one side, maybe taking a few moments there. And then in your own time, pressing yourself up and back to a seated shape. Taking your time, finding your seated shape. And if you'd like, maybe bringing your palms together in front of your chest. May the light within me honor the light within each of you. Namaste. Thank you for joining me for this evening's yoga class. My name is Kristin O'Donnell, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye bye, everyone.